Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Mental Edge Training Coach podcast here with Chad Hermansen. Today I have a special guest, a former minor league teammate of mine in Augusta and in Lynchburg. His name is Todd Blyleven. Todd is the son of Hall of Fame pitcher Bert Blyleven. So we were teammates in A-ball together. Fantastic dude. He's been around the game of baseball for quite a long time, not only as a minor league player, but also as a scout. So he's got a lot of things going on. He has a Scout Hub app that helps in the recruiting process of players. So he teaches a lot of players about the recruiting process. And he also had his life changed on October 1st, 2017. He was in the mass shooting here at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas and was a survivor, or is a survivor of this mass shooting, and has just an incredible story about what he did that particular night, what it was like, the therapy and everything that he's had to go through in this whole experience. So I was able to listen to his story the other day on another podcast and was just amazed at what he did, and truly shows the type of dude that he is. And he's just an amazing guy. So you're going to love this experience. So enjoy this conversation with Todd Blyleven. All right, Mr. Todd Blyleven, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's up, brother? It's been
Dude,
a long time.
it's great to see you, man. We're just laughing at all the grades we got now, and you're 50. Like, you just hit the 50 mark, right? That's a big mark. How you feeling about that?
I'm going backwards. So I think you hit
Yeah,
50. It's like a boomerang effect. Now I'll be 49 this year, coming
there
up
you
in
go.
September. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I feel good. I feel young.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you and I, we first met in the minor leagues, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Augusta. That's where we first started. You were a pitcher, I was a position player. Now tell us about kind of your draft story. You're out of California. Tell us about how that whole process went. And I'm gonna just preface this to the people listening. We're gonna talk about Todd's career here, some of the expectations he had, and then we're gonna get into the heavy stuff a little bit that really changed your life. So we're gonna kind of build up to that. So just to kind of give the audience a little heads up here. But yeah, tell us about your draft story and how that all came about.
Yeah. I grew up in a baseball household. My dad played, Burt Blyleven. He's in the Hall of Fame. And so
Not
growing
bad.
up in those, yeah, not bad. He was pretty good. But, growing up in that household, there was a lot of expectations, obviously. And I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit. But I was obviously a really good high school player. I was one of the best in the state and then the country. And I had just about every school in the country offering me, big scholarships. And I worked really hard to get to that point. I knew that I was pretty good, and I had some big offers coming in pre-draft.
Mm,
What really hurt me was, I think, a lack of education on my parents' side with how the draft really works
mhm.
and how a scout, and this, and I was a major league scout as well for 8 years. When you go into a prospect's home, a prospect like you or like me when I was in high school, um, and you're saying, "Hey, are you draftable in the second round, the third round?" And they're putting some money down on the table in terms of what that round could look like financially. And if you don't play your cards right and you don't have expectations and goals before that question is asked, and you don't know what the answer is, those clubs leave your house and they say, well, we can't take you because we can't take that risk. And I remember Houston and Kansas City and Texas all came into our home and wanted to take me somewhere around that second, third round. Houston slid over a piece of paper on a coffee table. And my mom was like, nope, first round money or nothing.
Mm,
And at that point, I'm sitting there going, hold on. My dad's a big league player. Like, we don't need the money. I need the
right.
money.
Right.
you know, I want the money. But I was 17, going out of high school. So the draft didn't really work out for me very well going through high school. I was selected. It was more of an honorary thing. I was definitely an All-American, an All-State selection. Went to college. Didn't really care for where I went first. It was a transfer. Coaches transferred my about 2 months before school started from Cal State Fullerton. That's where I originally was in Letterman 10. It was right down the road from my house.
Mhm.
Super excited to go there. Even had a blue and gold golf bag that somebody had given me. So I was pumped. I was ready to be a Titan. And then the coaches transferred, and I went with them. And it just kind of went a little bit sideways for a bit. Ended up going to Cypress College. I really enjoyed that. We won state. I think about 19 of us on that team got drafted that year.
Wow.
Played with some great players. And then ended up at Fresno State and signed my junior year. So my first year of pro ball was 1993,
Okay.
and going into rookie ball with the Angels. So I enjoy. I mean, you remember when you sign that contract and now you're a pro player and it's just elevated. All of a sudden it's like, okay, I've reached this milestone in my life.
Mhm.
Now let's see what I can do. And then you get to spring training or to rookie ball and you're a little nervous, but you put that uniform on. And I still remember putting my legs in my pants and lacing up my spikes, and everything's new, and walking out on that field with everybody else, and there's just this pride that you have,
Mhm.
and you're a pro baseball player. And I thought, man, that was all worth it. Every single mile I ran and everything was just worth it at that moment. So there's my draft story.
Yeah.
A little bit up and down, but I really enjoyed every minute.
So I'm curious about, the obvious, right? You're the son of Blyleven, so Hall of Fame pitcher, is known as having one of the best curveballs ever in the game. What was that like growing up for you? Maybe the expectation of here's dad. Did you try to be just like him? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it definitely had its perks and its benefits. I mean, I got to be on a big league field up until I was really probably all the way through high school, to be honest. I traveled around with my dad. I went everywhere with him. I got a chance to rub elbows with some of the best players in the game and learn the game. And these guys took their time to like play catch with me and hit with me, and it was so much fun, man. It was just a totally different world, and they just opened up their world to me as a kid. And I was very respectful to their space. I knew at a young age, like when there was a loss, to keep your tone down. It's not the time to go running around the clubhouse and
Mhm.
go play tag with everybody. Like they take it very. It's a job. It's very, very serious at that moment. But when they win, it's a celebration. And, I really learned a lot on how to deal with your adversity through that time. But, I think the first time I'd always known my dad played, and I always, I'd get friends coming up and giving me the double handshake where they would, I'd meet a group of kids and then all of a sudden they'd find out my dad was a big leaguer and they'd give me the second handshake, or the
Mhm.
second high five, or wanted to hang out with me more at that point.
Okay.
And so I started to kind of learn how to filter my friendships out with people that really liked me, opposed to and I think I was a likable kid, but really kind of just wanted to like hang out with me and ride bikes and things, opposed to just because of who my dad was. But I remember I was on the mound at Villa Park High School in Southern California, and I think I had a no-hitter going through six, and I struck a kid out, and all I heard in the dugout was, "That's Bert Blyleven's son. That's Bert Blyleven's son. Oh, no wonder why. That's Bert's kid." And I'm like, you know what? My name is Todd,
Mhm.
and I'm going to strike the next guy out. And so I struck the next guy. I think I was trying to throw harder and harder, and um, but I started to realize, like, wow, no matter how good you are, I'm always going to have that label on me. And I think that kind of hurt a little bit too going into pro ball. There
Mm.
was always expectations on my breaking ball. I had
Sure.
a good one, but I didn't have my dad's. My dad's
Mhm.
is he's amongst, two of the best with Sandy Koufax and Burt Blyleven when you think
Yep.
all-time best curveballs. And how do you compare to that? So
Mhm.
I remember sitting with even like when we were in Augusta or in Lynchburg, and working with some of the pitching coaches and even managers, like they'd sit me down and talk to me about about what my dad did, or maybe having the control and command of my fastball away like my dad had, and I should spend some time with him. And I'm like, I do spend time with him. I'm just not as good as he is. And I think that was one part where I started to realize, like, man, I'm 7.5 years into this,
Mm.
going up and down all over the place. I've lived all over the country, and I'm doing the best I can. I'm in the best shape of my life. Um, but I'm not hitting that mark, which was a big point in my life where I had to think about calling it quits and moving on
Hmm.
from that moment. But yeah, it was a lot of expectations, and most of it was all great. It was all great. I just went out and did my best.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's you did what you can. No, that's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, you
yeah,
just kinda figure everyone handles it differently, and there's different circumstances on how they go about it, and, I find it really interesting that a coach would say just in a way, "Hey, just do it like your dad does." Right? That's kinda weird to me, but,
yeah.
at the same time, it's sometimes as a coach, you don't know what else to do or say.
Yeah, I look at the knowledge now. You look back, because we're older and we have more skin in the game. We've been around more players, more coaches, and some of the guys that I think we both had probably going through the system. I mean, great guys, great coaches, but I think there's sometimes a lack of empathy on maybe what a player's going through, or a
Right.
lack of connection, and really trying to identify like how to get that horse to really run
Mhm.
and run the right way. And it's not their fault by any means. It's just knowing character and having an idea on um, just different mentalities on or different methodologies on pitching, for example. One
Mhm.
guy always taught the same way, no matter who you were. I mean, we had Andrew Lorraine coming from the left side. We had some good pitchers coming up, but everybody had their quirkiness. And this guy like wanted to cookie cut everybody. And it ended up hurting some guys, and I at one point just had to tell him, coach, like I'm not who that you want me to be. Like I like to get big and wild with my leg
Yeah.
and throw it as hard as I can. And you know, that at that moment, that's when I think like because of who I was, I got a little bit of like leeway in times because I would throw down quotes from like a Marcel Latchman or different big league pitching coaches that I've been
Right.
around.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'll tell you, I really had a blast growing up, and I wouldn't trade it for a minute.
Yeah.
Uh, even with the expectations, and I still get it today. I still get the double handshake, which
Sure, yeah.
which
Well,
is
you'll
normal.
always be Bert's son, right?
Yeah,
So,
totally
I'm
normal.
sure you probably get to the point, like, this is just the way it is,
Yeah,
right?
and it's
Rather
not
than
bad. He's a
yeah,
good guy.
yeah,
He
he's a
gives
swell
back.
fellow.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So it's kinda funny, so we've kinda reconnected here, and you had scouted for a while, and I scouted for a while, but I we never crossed paths really in that area, but, um, I've told this story before when I had Banny on, Jeff Bannister, when we were in Kingston, and we brought it up the other day when we were kinda reconnecting here, so I want you to tell the story about when we were in Kingston, what you remember about it, and kinda the whole thing there.
Well, we were that was the Indians
Yeah.
A ball, right?
Yep.
If I remember right. So old time stadium, and it started to rain, and they had a big cover, it was a big stadium. And so all the fans started going up and they started putting the tarp on, and we were in a rain delay.
It's heavy rain,
It was
right?
heavy rain. Yeah, and it came down pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I don't know who initiated it, but it was you and me, and I think Sweet, maybe who
Jonathan Sweet.
Jonathan
Yep.
Sweet. I think there was just the three of us,
Yeah.
and we decided that we were gonna to rile up the fans.
Was
We were
Dilly
gonna
in
go,
there? Was John
huh?
Dillinger in there?
Yes, I
Dilly?
think
Okay.
Dilly
I
was
think
in
there was
there.
4, yeah.
Yep, John Dillinger. And I think
Yeah.
I think we yeah, we started at home plate and we started running around the bases.
Wait,
And
what were we wearing, if you remember that? I think we kinda everyone did a different thing, but I was in just my, sliding shorts. That was it. Shirt off.
I think I had my uniform on.
Did you?
I think I was fully dressed, man. I didn't
So
have
you
your
had your
body.
number, you're gonna get in big trouble.
Yeah. I but I remember we ran around, we slid all over that thing and just soaking wet. And the dugout was down the third baseline.
Yep.
So we had to run down to the dugout, and then we all decided we're just gonna jump in the shower and maybe Benny wouldn't
Yeah.
find out about
It
it.
so what was interesting, so we're like Banny's a young manager. He's probably like, "Mother effing this rain, I wanna play." He's the only one in the dugout with maybe like 2 other guys or something. In the dugout, was down below ground
That's right.
level, and it started to fill up. So I even remember we were taking cups and like making boats out of them and just starting to. We're like, okay, well, we better get out of here. This is getting bad, right? So
Yep.
otherwise, we're not going to be able to get out of here.
Yep.
But so he stayed, and then we're running, and then we slide, and I was really so it was two pitchers and a position player, if you look at it that way. And I slid at about shortstop, which was my position at the time. And I went like all the way to the first baseline. Got up, and you hear Banny like, "Hi, what are you guys doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, he sees us, right?" And we were pumped up because the crowd was going like, "Yeah, go!" They were cheering us on. So we entertained the fans, right?
Yep.
And got
Yep.
back up, and then we're like, let's just run back to the clubhouse, which is like in left field, right? And we're like, let's just jump in the shower, just shower, get dressed real quick. Maybe he doesn't know it's us, right? And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but he got back to the clubhouse and we were still in the shower. And he's like, you and you and you
That's right. He starts
get
pointing.
dressed and get in my office.
I thought I was done.
Right. And then so I'm 18, right? I'm just an idiot out of high school, basically. I'm in my first full year, right? In Lynchburg. This is in Lynchburg when we were playing for them.
Yep.
I think you were like what, 2 years in. So this was 96. You're 2 or 3 years in.
That was like 4 years in for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I should have known better.
you're like one of our top guys, right? And we're like, yeah, let's just do it. And then Danny comes in, he's like, you guys realize what happens if you get hurt? Like there's stakes in the ground. Like, what if you cut yourself open? And of course we were like, oh, sorry. So I think
We didn't think about that.
like, I just want to slide on the tarp. Like who thinks about getting hurt, right?
Hey man, 30 years later or whatever it is or whatever it's been,
Yeah.
we're telling this story again. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
much
is.
fun.
It's one of the greatest. Like, I totally remember all of it, and just how fun that was, right?
Yeah.
And that was a fun team. We did pretty well. I came up in the second half from Augusta, and I think you did too. Didn't you come
Yep.
up? We
Yep.
were kind of around the same time,
Yep.
but yeah, it's obviously a long time ago, but yeah, great stories. And so kind of moving forward through your career, you wrap up your career. See what you played 7, 8 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Just short of 8.
And
Yeah.
then you get right into the scouting side of things, right? Tell us about your scouting career.
Yeah. After baseball ended for me, I went through, about a year of transition, little over a year, really depressed. I think a lot like other players or
Yeah.
even, compare it to kind of military coming out and going into civilian life or anybody that's been in a long career. So I struggled in that regard and got an opportunity to get into scouting. I called Tim Mead up, that was with the Angels at the time. He was their VP of operations or PR, but he had a high title. And I asked Tim, I'd known him for a long time, hey, what can I do in baseball? I just miss it. Obviously, I can't, I'm not going to play anymore. He said, why don't you go into scouting? You'd be a great scout. You've been around the game your entire life. There's a Major League Scouting Bureau was putting on a school in Tucson. That was coming up, like, I think it was a little more than a month after that call. He said, why don't you prepare for that? And then that's where scouts can get hired from. And so I had to get endorsed to go. And I'd spoken to my dad about it. And so anyways, I got endorsed by the Angels to go to scout school. And which was awesome and just learned a lot. I remember I was sitting there, we were watching a Rockies inter squad game. And it was during instructs when they had instructs. I think they're doing mini camps now, but so there I am. I'm watching a guy hit, and he ends up getting a nice base hit to left field. And I'm standing with an old time scout, Jim Walton, that had cowboy boots on and polyester pants and the cowboy hat. And he must have been 80 at the time.
Yeah.
And he had an old fashioned stopwatch, one of the ticker ones. And
reminds me of Squeaky Parker.
Yeah, there's so many of those guys,
Yeah.
and I loved hanging out with all because you learn so
Yeah.
much. But I'm watching him hit, and he says, "Hey Todd," he goes, "What'd you see right there?" And I said, "Man, nice hit. Went with the pitch. The pitch kind of tailed away a little bit from him, and he threw his hands and a nice little base hit to left." And he goes, "No, no, no. What'd you see mechanically?" And so then I'm like, okay, well, let me break the swing down. So I'm breaking the swing down, nice little load, good timing and rhythm, got a little on his front side. He said, what'd the pitcher's mechanics look like? And now I'm like, I'm going back 2 pitches because I wasn't really concentrating on that. I wasn't really interested in the pitcher, even though he's a pro guy, I just didn't really care for it. And so I'm like, well, across his body, a little funky arm action. He's got a little hook.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about some stuff and I'm trying to use scout lingo because that's what we're being taught. It's like a 2 week long, all day session, classroom sessions, go out in the field,
Mhm.
scout. So he goes, okay, great. He goes, what about the left fielder? Was the left fielder in position to catch that ball? And I'm like, yes. And he goes, what was his arm like? What would you grade that left fielder's arm out like? And I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't paying attention to that. Okay. Average, and he's like, was
Play
the
it safe.
shortstop? Yeah. He's like, was the shortstop in position? And what was the shortstop's first reaction? Was it left, right? Was he on his toes? Like, can you give a description of what his stance was like, in pre-pitch? And I'm like, no. And he goes, you have to be able to see all of that and as a scout. And I'm like, by the time I got done talking to him, I was like, okay, I've been around the game my entire life, but I don't know anything about
You're
the
like,
game.
"Do I wanna do this?" That's way too much focus, right?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, you learn a lot, right? And now you go to a ball game and I can focus my eyes on one area of the field and I can see all the pre-pitch and see the movement of all the players and I can identify certain areas of the windup, whether he drifted or not, and I can see the timing of the hitter. And then you're working the hitter up and down as a scout, and you learn so much from those guys as long as they're willing to open it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, really enjoyed scouting. I thought that was a lot of fun. Outside the travel, it's not easy on a family,
Yeah.
as you know. So
You made a good point on other conversation about that scouting is really either for the young guy that doesn't have a family yet or an older guy that's kids are kinda grown up. Like,
yeah,
explain that a little bit more.
yeah. I think just because of the workload and the expectations, like when I first was, I got a job with the Angels at a scout school, and my area was Northern California. So I ended up living in a small little town. Ended up being the stolen capital, car capital of the world, Merced, California. At the time, I don't know what it's like now. I had
Well,
my
you've
truck.
always lived dangerously, so
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
you got to live
yeah.
dangerously. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. But I remember Tommy Davis was my West Coast cross
Yeah.
checker,
Mhm.
and we had just gotten off a 2 day road trip, kind of bouncing all over California and in Nevada, into Reno. And so I'm home. I'm finally able to like really take a shower. So I'm in the shower. I hear my phone ringing. I'm doing my thing. I'm washing my hair, whatever, and I get out eventually, and I go and check my phone, and it rang another time, and so it was Tommy. So I called Tommy back. I said, "Hey, Tommy, what's going on?" He goes, "Where were you?" And I said, "Tommy, I was in the shower." And he goes, "I don't care if you're in the shower. When I call, you better answer that phone. I need to know an answer right now." And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. And right then he kind of set the tone of, you've got to like have all your ducks lined up. You got to know when all the pitchers are going nonstop because a cross checker could come in and say, "Hey, I'm coming in tonight at 10. Can you pick
Yeah.
me up at the airport? We're going to a game in the morning," and totally shifts your whole schedule. It's not easy on a family.
You're like, "Do I
There's
need to
no,
shower with my phone?" Like, what do I what?
yeah, you have to shower with it.
Yeah.
But Tommy was a great scout. And yeah, I think it's just the travel, the unknown, expectations. Most of the evenings you're gone.
Right.
You get a couple days in the week that you can really be home. And then financially too, I think I needed something at that time in my life that was a little bit more um probably a little bit more. More is probably the bigger
Yeah.
word
You
there,
start out
for
pretty
all the
low. Yeah.
yeah, for all the hours and the time and the commitment that you're putting into it, you just don't get paid very well.
Yep.
And I think that's what's wrong with baseball today is they need to treat the scout and the baseball administrative staff and the operations teams and all the coaches, they need to treat them like they were managers in a corporate setting. Because
Mhm.
in a if they got paid what typical managers get paid in a warehouse or even working the corporate jobs that I've worked, then I'll tell you, it would be a great, great job
Yep.
outside of being able to go watch baseball every day and the pressures that you have. But
Yeah.
yeah, they just don't get paid enough.
Well, it in a way, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit about that because you have such a I kind of maybe this fantasy, right, about being a scout and like you're still involved in the game and you have input and you're busting your balls out there, all the while, like as your kids grow up at home, probably 100 to 125 nights, I think I averaged on the road.
Mhm.
Um, and then you're getting paid pretty crappy, if we're being frank, for
Yeah.
everything you're doing. So it's a little disheartening. Where people ask me all the time about scouting, I'm upfront and honest with them, and there's definitely like every job, there's pros and cons to it. There's a lot of things I loved about it, like just like the people, right? The
Yep. Yep.
guys you're around, you feel like you're on a team again. There's
Yep.
all that stuff, and then you get that paycheck. You're like, you know. But
That's
it
the
is what
toughest
it
part.
is. Like some people will do it for nothing, right? But
Yeah.
you get a little bit of a raise each year. Usually not a whole lot. So a little underappreciated. I think a lot of the guys I've talked to, and I felt a little bit that way too. But it's baseball, right? So you kind
Yeah.
of like, do I want to do this or be in a suit somewhere in an office? So
Yeah.
you kind of suck it up, right? And
Yeah.
do other things. But so now which teams you scouted for the Angels? And now was that mainly on the amateur side or did you go to the pro side too?
Yeah, I did both. It's kind of a hybrid guy between the Angels and then the Rockies. So when I had Northern California through Nevada with the Angels, and then in 2002, after we won the World Series, um, I ended up Rockies had an opening down south.
Mhm.
So I was told, and I'd been asking for a southern job. The Angels were going to split Southern California into three parts. And it was Bobby DeJarden, Tim Corcoran, and then it was going to be myself.
Yeah.
Just because Southern California has so many players, but then the Rockies had an opening covering all of Southern Cal, and so I ended up taking that position under Bo Hughes and Billy Schmidt, and yeah,
Yep.
I had a blast. I really loved it, but then Kathy, we're married or get married, and we have our son Dylan a year later, and now fast forward a few years, and I'm sitting at a ballpark and at Dylan's game, I'm sitting at my
Mm.
little boy's game, and I'm on the phone talking about a prospect with somebody within the Rocky organization, and I miss Dylan's at bat. I
Yeah.
turn around, Dylan's giving a high five to the coach. My wife is walking my daughter down. I think Gracie was one or maybe two down the left field line, and I'm missing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at that moment, I just thought, man, it's not worth it. So I got to do something. So I ended up starting an indoor training facility. I'd given lessons. We all give lessons, right?
Mhm.
I love working with kids
Yeah.
or players, and so I did that for a little bit, and then got an opportunity through that to meet a big corporate CEO of a big sports company at the time, and he said, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I said, I want to maybe, keep doing this. I want to make money. I'd like to support my family. I mean, I knew I was probably never going to make $1 million a year doing what I was doing, but I loved what I was doing.
Mhm.
And he said, have you ever thought about going in the corporate world of sports? And I said, I don't even know. What am I going to do there? And so he said, let's talk. And so
Right.
he took me out to Islands in California, which was like a burger joint. We probably went out. He took me out probably 4 or 5 times, and this is a really busy, busy guy. And he just really cared about where I was going. I think he saw something in me that was better than what I saw.
Yeah.
And he saw what I could provide to a company with my connections and my lifelong just living in the game. And so at the end, he said, let me see your phone. So he looks at my contacts and he said, I just saw 3 contacts in your phone list that would take me about 6 months to try to build a relationship with from a business standpoint. He said, you could probably call these people up and say, hey, I'm in town. Let's go out to dinner. And so he told me who they were, and they were really high influential people in sports. And I said, yeah, I've known this guy since I was a baby and blah, blah, blah. And he said, that's business development.
Mm.
He said, you find an organization that needs connections like what you can provide, they're going to pay you, and you can be employed and make probably way more money than you were making scouting and be home with your kids. And so really just kind of painted this picture of an opportunity that I never, ever thought that I would ever have in my life. And he took a chance on me, and I worked really hard for him and had a really successful, corporate career for about 12 years, or the past 12, 13 years. So
Yeah.
it's amazing if you open up your door, right? And
Yeah. No, that's incredible. It's even taking you to now a new direction, right? Where your head's blocking a little bit, but you have this new company that you've started called the Scout Hub, right? This You've kind of shifted towards that. Tell us about what the Scout Hub is.
yeah, so I've been pretty heavy into sports analytics the last 6+ years. I knew that where the game was going, especially baseball. So I wanted to become an expert in sports analytics and metrics, understanding if what diamond kinetics and blasts. And back then I was a consultant with Zepp when Zepp first came out, and had some big conversations with those guys. I wanted to be able to, if I'm going into a conversation, I want to know what I'm talking about. And it just really intrigued me with where all that was going. So I ended up sitting down with a couple scouts that I'd still consulted with in teams. And a guy didn't understand the difference between 2 major metrics of bad exit velocity and barrel speed, on what the differences were within those 2 categories. And this was a national cross checker for an MLB team as a scout. And so I started educating him on what that was. But then I also realized that the system that they were using to evaluate players was really outdated.
Mm.
And so I had spent, again, those 6 months in web development and coding. And now with my baseball knowledge and then what I had in the corporate space, I was consulting with Pocket Radar. So I was radar certified, and there was a lot that I just kind of dove into everything. I just wanted to learn.
Mhm.
And I ended up building a scouting app that's unlike anything on the market, where it marries subjective scouting. So old time scout can go out and scout a player traditionally.
Mhm.
And then a new scout can go out and scout a player with metrics and using technology. And it all come up with a quantified role that's probably better than some of the MLB systems that are out, that takes 25 analysts. And now the game's starting to come back to scouts. But it allows the scout to really evaluate based on what they're seeing, and then adding the metrics in. So I built that, and where that stemmed from, or kind of took off, was the Scout Hub. The Scout Hub I ended up evolving. My son needed a recruiting profile, so I made this 1-page scrollable platform where I could add all his videos and everything. And I wanted to make it better than anything on the market, because that's me. I'm just competitive that way.
Sure.
And so I had a lot of people ask if they could have it. And I said, yeah, I can make this for you. And so that kind of evolved into the athlete resume program. And kind of fast forwarding now, we've got scouting and evaluation software for showcase and tournament companies, incredible athlete promotional platform, and it's all under $100 a year. So I don't think any kid or parent should have to pay a lot of money
Mhm.
for that technology. I built it. I understand how tough it is, and ours is the best in the world. We offer about 40% more benefits than anybody. You've
Mhm.
got access to 52,000 college coach contacts, Twitter handles, multi-sports, all kinds of cool stuff. And it's under $100. And go
Mhm.
spend your money on development. Go work with you, Chad, work on the mental side of the game. if you're planning on spending $1,000 a year on promoting yourself, take 100, promote yourself, and take the other 900 if you're planning on spending that, and go put it towards the development of your game, or maybe take yourself out to dinner or a vacation.
Okay.
So that's been our big model, and we're starting to, work with a lot of organizations, which I'm really excited about, and just keep providing more.
Yeah.
But I've got the scouting app that's been revised now, so that's coming in about 30 days. I'm really excited for that because I built it for single coach use only. Now it's going to have the ability to invite multiple scouts, multiple coaches under one account.
Okay.
So it'll be really useful for college coaches, programs, big tournament companies, and things like that. So
Okay. So this
yeah,
is an option to use instead of, say, paying thousands of dollars for a recruiting service. Is
yep,
that fair to say?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So it's an app where you download your video, you have your profiles, you have connections through the app with college coaches, right? So it's just kind of everything you need is right there in one spot for under $100.
yeah. College coaches are coming in. They've got their own pages. It's got the scouting and evaluation software attached where if you go to an event, they're using that software, My Tools,
Mm,
um, and they evaluate you. Those metrics are automatically electronically added to your athlete resume, your profile. So it gives validation where
mm,
college coaches want to see. What do they want to see? They want to see videos. Where on my system, it's unique because you can watch videos like NFL Red Zone. So coaches can push play, and I can watch 9 videos of the player play all at one time. So I'm getting an idea on, like, there he is hitting in a cage, there he is playing in a game, there he is playing defense, there he is on a mound, the multi-sport aspect, or I'm seeing hit after hit. So it gives me an idea in like 10, 15 seconds on what that player is all about, which is amazing coming from a scout's perspective. And then you can add your stats and metrics, analytics, academics, all the fun stuff. And you can even add your other player links. Like I'm a software provider. We're
okay.
not a quote unquote recruiting company. I guess we're walking the thin line, but I want, if they've got an NCS profile or a field level profile or a
Mhm.
perfect game, like they can put those links into this so the
Okay.
college coach can have one place, which is
Okay.
nice.
Yeah,
So
so that's what I wanted to make sure of, like, are you actually literally helping people get recruited? Which you just answered, no, it's more of a software that you can add all this information, and college coaches are still using it.
yeah, a lot of these programs, a lot of these big recruiting companies are charging hundreds or thousands of dollars, even to like promote, hey, if you spend $40 a month, we'll let you know when a college coach views your video, and
Right.
we'll let you know which college coach that is. Well, guess what? Google just launched a program called Streak. So you can set up a free Gmail account, which you should anyways, say Todd.Blyleven 2024 at gmail.com. And then I can click into Streak, which is a CRM platform that allows me to send a video to University of Texas saying, hey, coach, check out my athlete resume profile. When that coach clicks on opens up my email, I get a notification from Streak for free
Mm,
that says, hey, your link was opened. And then I can hover over that little eyeball that Streak provides, that gives me all the details, how many times it was open, where it was open, what device they used to open it with. So it's free. It's a
yeah.
free service. So there's really no reason that people should be, if I'm a company like one that offers that as a service, and kind of that's my linchpin of saying, hey, if you want to see which college coaches saw your profile, pay us another $40 a month. That's over $480 a year.
Mhm.
What can families do for $480, nowadays? Like you can do a lot with that money,
Yeah.
maybe pays for your phone bill, or makes a car payment for yourself every month,
Mhm.
whatever that is. And now, Google just launched it for free. So I'm a big educator on pushing that platform combined with what we provide. And really, there's no reason. I give you everything for under $100 to market yourself, and then you got to develop. You can go
Yeah.
out and throw around the greatest resume in the world, but if the videos aren't right, in terms of you being able to play, well, what, you're not going to end up getting recruited. So
Right.
go
Yeah.
spend the time with Chad Hermansen and get better, and other people. Work on your game, the mental side, and learn more about yourself. So, but yeah,
Gotcha.
it's been pretty exciting.
And that can be just the Scout Hub on the App Store? That's where they find that at?
So it's actually a web app.
Web app,
Yeah,
okay.
I found that was a little easier, less expensive as
Yeah,
well, but
true.
easier because I could connect all the multiple categories of my programs all to one platform.
Yeah.
When you're working with an app, you're a little bit limited. And so the Scout Hub that's on iOS, that's my MLB scouting system. That one is now built for college programs, tournament companies. If you want to scout a player in game from the MLB pro side down to little league, I've scaled it and built it so a little league coach could come in and evaluate players using a really easy to use scouting system. And then a advanced pro guy, which I have 4 guys right now using my system at the pro level, which they're really excited for these new updates to come, but they're using it
Okay.
where they've got like the MLB switch on. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh,
pretty cool. Yeah.
very cool. Well, no, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Sounds like a great service and cool software, and, well, that's awesome, man. You're doing some amazing things, and we had caught up again, and we're gonna dive into the big stuff here.
Mm,
So, correct me if I'm wrong on the date, on October 1st, 2017,
correct.
right? So your life changed. You're out here in Las Vegas, and you're out here just kinda hanging out with family, friends, doing your thing. Tell us what happened to you on that day.
Well, probably the precursor there is we had been to that country harvest festival 3 years, prior, and that was kind of my wife and I. That was our time to really go and cut loose. We had moved to Texas a few months before that, on August of 2017. So we moved from Southern California. So a lot of our Southern California friends were coming up. We'd always
Mhm.
meet there. Usually it was a younger crowd. We had known these kids since they were little. They called us aunt and uncle. We were the party aunt and uncle that would go party with the 21, 22-year-olds. But they loved it. We loved them. And there was about 18 of us at this concert, some from Texas, but mostly all from California. And, you know, um, I tell this story too, going into that weekend, my life, I was still trying to understand where I was at,
Mm,
personally.
mhm.
Even though I had success through my corporate career, there was always still this unknown of what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't understand what my like definition of success was, So when you're playing and you're winning, you're succeeding. But when you're in a corporate setting or when you're in the real world of work, like sometimes that definition of success is undefined. And so I almost felt at times like unfulfilled with my work, unfulfilled with my marriage, unfulfilled just as a person. I didn't really have any kind of daily goals. I didn't have anybody really to talk to either.
Mm.
Being a guy, you hold a lot of stuff in and you walk through fire sometimes and, you get burned and you're like, hey, I'm just going to deal with it. I'm
Right.
going to deal with the pain. And I was raised as in that kind of, in that mentality of no blood, no foul. You get up, dust yourself off and go. And on that night, on that weekend, it just couldn't have been better. Like we were having so much fun. And we had been there, to that venue, like I said, multiple times. Every night for the years that we had gone, it's a 3-day country fest. We'd always be on the right side of the stage near the VIP. In fact, my wife and I would usually get the VIP wristbands so
Yeah.
she could use the restroom that was right there.
Okay.
And and so I remember once the last performer would come on, all the girls that were in our group, which were most young girls, and my wife, they would all run up to the stage and they'd secure, kind of this area right up on the rail. And us guys would kind of be about 10 feet back or less. And we'd be drinking our beers and hanging out and watching the girls, dance and the performers there. And it was always just so much fun.
Mm.
And you felt like free, like there was just not a care in the world what was going on. And I'm a big country guy. I love country. I've loved it my entire life. And so Jason Aldean is getting ready to come on October 1st. And my birthday was the 27th of September. And
Mm.
so, it was a better weekend. I mean, it just seemed like I was always celebrating my birthday in Vegas, and we loved Vegas and we still do. But that was our place to just go and unwind. And so he comes on, and for the first time, we decide we're not going to go up to the front by the rails. We were about 20 feet back. And for some reason, we had this little opened area, and we were dancing and having fun. And there's video of me dancing with, I call her my niece, but it's just someone that we've known since she was little.
Mhm.
And I'm dancing with her, and I was just dancing with my wife just before that, and we are swing dancing, and all of a sudden, you hear these noises, little pops, and you're trying to figure out where it's coming from and what it was. But then you look around, and law enforcement still on the right hand side. I was always pretty aware of where I was at. Have a lot of law enforcement buddies. I've always heard stories about things. I wanted to be a Marine coming out of college. That was either I was joining the Marine Corps, which I did in my junior year, or I'm gonna go play baseball.
Mm.
And I was honored to go play baseball and go do that. But so I was always pretty aware with where I was at. But the first round of popping sounds went off. Jason's still playing, and then all of a sudden you hear this barrage of machine gun fire. And at that moment, that's when everybody started thinking, okay, there's a drive-by. There's something going on the other side of the wall on Las Vegas Boulevard, near Mandalay Bay. And what is it? But yet, now you look over and police are on their walkies, and they're starting to kind of like get a little nervous, but Jason's still playing. And so you're like, okay, well, it was a burst. But like, it seems like everybody's okay in that minute. And then all of a sudden the second uh, round started. And that's when you're hearing the screams and everybody's going down, and Jason goes off the runs off the stage. And that's when you're telling everybody to get down on the ground, and you realize that now you are a target,
Mm.
and people are getting hit around you. And you got your wife right there in front of you. You're on one knee, and I look up and I could see the muzzle flash coming from a high elevated spot across at Mandalay Bay. And so I knew we were basically in an open fire range that with no coverage, and we were sitting ducks. And so I told everybody to get up and run. And that's exactly what we did. I pulled my wife up, and my brother-in-law and his wife were right there. And we got up and everybody started to run. And I can't tell you, man, like, that's, I still think about it, almost every day, that moment of as you're running. And I wanted to get further away from the gunfire. So we ran east towards Giles Street, and there was a Budweiser booth at the end of kind of where the food vendor row ended. And so I wanted to get to that Budweiser booth because it was metal, and all this happened super quick. And so we're running, and, the second round was still going off, like within the first probably felt like 10 yards, right? Everything just slowed down in your life. And as you're running, you feel like you don't know if your boot's going to land on the ground. I mean, that's basically what I
Mm.
try to tell people is it was that scary. It was that real. And you got your wife in front of you, and all you're trying to do is be as big as you can, as big as a target as you can be. Praying that if a bullet does come that way, that it's going to hit you and not your wife. And we were able to successfully get to the Budweiser booth, and We sat there for less than really probably a second. I got everybody back up. I realized the gate was open onto Giles. There were some squad cars there for parking control. We got to the squad car. There was already a couple people there that had been injured. One girl had been hit. And we were going to stay there. And I looked down towards Tropicana on Giles and recognized there were 4 cars there, squad cars. So I said, let's get up. I mean, it was kind of like hunker down, get up, hunker down, let's go. And we started to run, Chad, and I'm out, like we're out, right? And I look over to my left, and there's a guy carrying a woman that had been hit, and he's carrying her like a pair of scissors. I mean, it was a younger girl, and I ran over to my left and helped him. We got about 5 yards, and we laid her down, and she was gone. And at that moment, you know, um, I got, man, that was tough. I ran back to my wife, and I just knew I had to go back in. And so, I looked her in the eyes and I told her that I loved her, but I need to go back in. And I think, she was dazed. My brother-in-law and his wife were sitting right there. And so I told Joe, take the girls and go run north. I'll find you when this is over. And at the time, I didn't know who was shooting. Like, I knew there was a shooter from above, but as we were running the acoustics, it seemed like there was a shooter on stage, or in that general direction. It seemed like there was a shooter almost in front of us to the south on southeast Giles. So it seemed like there were multiple shooters, and I'm not saying there was by any means. It's the acoustics and the audio that was going on, plus your running and your heartbeat and everything else. So I'm not getting into conspiracy theories there or any of that stuff, but the fact is that people were getting hit, people needed help. And so I had 2 arms and 2 legs, and I ran back in. I kissed my wife goodbye and watched her run, and then I turned around. And when I ran back in, obviously you're scared as shit. I mean, you're scared out of your mind. You don't know what you're going to see. You don't know what you're going to come up on. I'm in defense fight mode, where if I see, I'm expecting somebody to come around the corner of that Budweiser booth with a gun, and I'm going to tackle that SOB and take him out. Like that was the mentality there. And I ended up coming across an older woman. At least she seemed older, and she had been shot, and she was hobbling out. And I don't know why she was alone, but I picked her up and I ran her back out to the squad car. And I thought, this will be the spot. So this is where I'm going to go in. I'm going to get people. I'm going to pull them out. And as soon as I laid her down, I went back. And right as I was going back through the gates, a blonde-haired woman, probably 5'0" stopped me and said, "I'm a trained ER nurse. What can I do to help?" I said, "Ma'am, there's already women down there that are injured. There's a security guard or a police officer or somebody right there as well. He had hurt his foot. If you can just put your hands on them, and I'll be back. I'm going to go in and get more people out." And so I just kept running back and forth. And, there's video of me coming up. It's probably the second or third time I had gone in. There was a girl that was shot. This lady was screaming for help, and I went around and screamed for a medic, a nurse, someone to come out. A brave girl came out of hiding, a brunette girl. Don't know who she is, but she said she was a nurse. She came. I brought her over to this. It was the same Budweiser booth we had hunkered down in for a brief second. Put her over the rail, and she helped save this girl's life. And it was all captured on video by this bystander that was filming basically her last video, is what she was calling it. And then you start to hear the tinkering of the bullets hitting that building, that Budweiser booth, and I run off back into the venue. I think that's about the time when I had come across Rachel Parker, which was a Manhattan Beach clerk officer, and her 2 friends. And they were struggling to get her out, and I was there was already a couple people that I had passed that were gone, that I had checked for life while they were unfortunately on the turf. And I ended up picking up Rachel and bringing her out. I ran her out with her two friends, put her in a car, and they were able to get off to the hospital. Unfortunately, she didn't make it. The next morning, I didn't know. I didn't know who she was. I didn't find that out until later through Facebook after everything was over. Somebody had found me, connected me to the woman that was looking for the person that carried their friend out. I couldn't understand why I was yelling at this older guy. I wanted him to get in the car, but I couldn't figure out why at that time. And this is what EMDR therapy, and I'll go into that later. This is how it really helped me. But at that time, I remember yelling at a man, like, and he was like cussing me out, and I'm like, "You SOB, like, don't you know what's going on here? Like, get in the car." And I didn't understand why I wanted this guy to get in the car. And turns out, like, it was a female driver and three females in the back, and I don't know why, but I felt like I needed. We thought we were under attack,
Right.
so not that they couldn't have like taken care of themselves, but I wanted someone to be with them. And I was so mad. And when I met these girls, they told me, "Do you remember what you said to that guy? Like, you were yelling at him, and then you ran off and you ran back in to the venue." And I said, "Now I know. Like, you totally connected me back. I understand why." And so it all came back to me. But when I went back in after I got Rachel out, I carried out a younger girl that was down, and she reminds me of my niece. It was really hard, and she ended up passing in my arms on the street there, and I laid her down, and I had my World Series ring on, at that time with the Angels,
Mhm.
and I remember looking down and I saw my ring, and at that moment, like, nothing was good about it, right? So I turned it around. I didn't want to see it. And a gentleman asked if I knew who she was. I said no, and he told me that she was gone. I said, "Yeah, I know." And after that, you get up. You're so thirsty. I'd cry out for a beer or water or something, and people would
Mhm.
just throw me whatever they had in their hands. As waves of people were starting to run out, right? Um, Waves of people now were going with me and running back in, where it was just me and probably others around the venue, and people that were instant dropping down on people, that had been
Mhm.
shot and injured, and helping. But now there was more than a lot of people going back and forth and helping and bringing people out. But I probably carried close to 30 or more people out, over
Mm.
my shoulder, across my arms. We carried one woman. Well, there were a lot of people that were getting carried out on like rails, wheelbarrows. There was a construction site down on the southeast side of Giles. I came up on people that were putting a girl into a wheelbarrow, and I grabbed the handles and ran her out. I don't think she made it either, just by the look of her. I think she was already gone.
Mm.
And you're putting people into cars and trucks, and you're just doing whatever you can. And you're pouring water over yourself. You're trying to like just keep moving. That's all I kept wanting to do. I was hurt. Um, my leg. I have a bad knee. I got a bad hip. Um, and that just completely tore it out. I ended up getting, a really bad hernia. I
Mm.
tore my left shoulder all up, had major reconstructive surgery from that, just from lifting and pulling, throwing people over. It was horrible. I had blood all over me. Unfortunately, my hat, my clothes, my boots. My boots were tore up just from probably, running and sliding on the ground. And um, all you're trying to do though is just trying to help. And at one point, I got up and I looked down Giles and I just drank some water and poured some water over my face. And now all of a sudden, like there was 3, 4 people when I first went in, and now there's hundreds on the street.
Mm.
And on top of them were 1,000 people helping. And it was inspirational. And so the emotions went from holy shit, scared out of your mind, to courage and run and do what you can to help somebody until you fall. Um, at one point, I'm standing there like a third base coach, waving people out from where they were at, where they were literally under using chairs as coverage. This was during the shooting, and they didn't know that the opening right on the other side of that Budweiser booth was open. So I'm waving people to get going and get out that exit point, and all of a sudden you're hearing the tinkering flying by my head. Thank God nobody got hit, but where they were all able to get out. But yeah, it was tremendously scary, and it didn't stop. It ended up where all of a sudden you're running over to Tropicana, and you're being told there's an active shooter there. You're under the backside of Tropicana in the service entrance, and you've got 150 people you're taking care of. You're barreling through doors looking for a shooter. At one point, I hand my wallet to this Marine that was next to me, and an EMT and a firefighter. And I said, if I get shot, you just, who I am, and you better take the son of a bitch out. And you're barreling through doors, and and all you're seeing is like 20 people, 30 people on top of each other, because people were scattered everywhere, just trying to hide. You didn't know if you're under attack. You didn't know if it was a single shooter. I thought it went on for 8 hours. So the end of the night, ambulances are finally starting to come back, and I'm told that somebody at the end of this tunnel has a knife in their hands, and they're wielding it around. And so now me and these 3 guys are running down this runway, just passing all these people that are sitting down. And I'm coming up on this dude, and he's got a knife in his hand, and he's doing this. And I'm like hoping or, praying, just, I've got a baseball in my hand or something, right? All I want to do is like throw it at him, but I'm yelling at the guy, like, you good guy, bad guy. And I'm screaming this at the guy, and the guy looks up, and I'm able to grab his hand and throw him up against the wall and disarm him. And it turns out he was just a innocent guy scared out of his mind, not trying to do any harm. He was just scared. And that's how crazy it was, in terms of how scared everybody was naturally. I mean, I think it was over 500 or 800 people ended up getting shot that night or injured. We lost 58 that night. I had my hands on 5 of them, in terms of 2 made it to the hospital. After we were let out, I didn't know where my wife was. So I had 1% battery life left. They let you out right in the front of Tropicana, which was stupid, because I looked down to the left and all I can see is, all the fire engines, and that was scary. And then I had to walk. She was at the Desert Rose Resort, which was right behind Tropicana. And so I'm tracking her on my maps, and I'm walking down this lonely, dark road to get behind Tropicana to go get her. And just scared, just completely scared. It finally started settling in, but I was able to meet up with her and give her a kiss, and we reunited. And we left the next day. But we went back a couple of years ago, and we walked around, and that was really tough. Like, we went back to the venue. Of course, it's not the same when you see it during the day.
Right.
But we went to the healing garden, and we walked around, and I'm about 5 steps in. When you go there, you walk around to the left, and you can see all the little memorials that friends had made, pictures, and brought them to life. Right? Unfortunately, they just weren't like a body. Unfortunately, they were somebody in that moment. And And we got about five spots in or so, 6 spots, I'm not sure. And then I noticed one of the girls that passed away in my arms. And she was a younger girl. And that that really, like, you know, I didn't want to, I didn't know really what to expect when I went walking around there. Like, I wanted to pay my respects. I wanted to say prayers, and I didn't think it was really going to hit me as hard. I knew it was tough, but to see their face and to see that she was a real person, and then we walked another few feet and there's another one.
Mhm.
And then there was Rachel, and Rachel's the only one that I really knew her name, because her friends reached out to me and I thought she had lived. And then in Messenger, we were going back and forth. She said, "I'm really sorry," because I had said, I'm really happy that the three of you made it out. Um, and she said, "I'm sorry that Rachel didn't make it. She died at the hospital hours later. But you should know that you gave her an opportunity, and she didn't die alone, and she died with people trying to save her."
Mm.
And that's how I felt when, I saw these poor women, um, as we walked around the healing garden. I started thinking, they didn't die by themselves, and they die with at least somebody with a loving hand, that was really trying truly to help them. It sucks. It's not the way that anybody should go. I'm mad over it, of course. I have anger on
Mhm.
that moment. I've never wanted to find out about the stupid shooter. I've never wanted to know who he was. He's a dark mask behind, you know, the the uh the bursting of bullets. But um what happened there was truly, truly tragic. And all I can say is that people rose up to uh, to show their love against all adversity and all odds. People from Vegas,
Mhm.
first responders, people came out of everywhere to help. The unity, the Vegas love, the country love, it was part of my healing process. And it gave me hope again that there's just not all bad people in this world, that there's way more good in our society. And I think that's one thing that, you know, everything from the sporting events in Vegas to the hotels and just everybody about it really felt. I mean, it was a knock in the face to everybody there, and nobody was going to stand for it. And so you could feel the love. It helped. I went through therapy, found EMDR therapy. I was recommended by a buddy of mine that was a fire captain up in Northern California, and that really worked. It really helped me understand more about where my boots took me that night. When you go through a traumatic event like that, mentally you're mush, and you're trying to piece it all together, and you're playing this movie back in your head. And the movie goes from, the beginning maybe to the end to the middle, and it skips around all over the place with what you remember. And what EMDR therapy did for me is it took 1 minute at a time, allowed me to process that minute and put it into the right spot, um,
Mm.
in chronological order. So I remember the majority of where I was at, why I was there, what it felt like, and I got to process all that. And I'm not a crier, but man, I cried. I
Mhm.
really cried, and it's exhausting. But I found a great therapist after a couple tries, and she was my light. She's my angel. I found my strength and faith, and I knew I wasn't alone that night. When I got home that first night, um, obviously, like, I get a phone call from a buddy of mine, that I didn't know who he was. He's a friend of my dad's, but he's a retired SEAL. He was a ranger, and he called and told me, "Hey, brother, like this is what you're going to go through. This is the experience that you're going to have over the next 72 hours. I'm here for you. I, did 3 tours in combat. You're a hero. We had weapons, you didn't. All these things." I'm like, "Well, I'm not a hero. I'm just wanting to go back in and help people." So he really became a resource for me. I knew I wasn't alone at that moment. He reached out to me. He grabbed my heart. He grabbed, mentally, I was locked in with him. And then that night, uh, I woke up probably around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, grabbed my wife's leg, and I was in this dream and I was running in the field. I could hear it, could smell it. You could smell the bullets on the turf. You
Mhm.
can hear the screams. And I'm running in. I'm trying to get a guy out that's screaming for help, and bullets are flying to my left. And I can see the red tracers. And so I'm kind of bobbing and weaving a little bit. And then bullets are flying to my right. And now bullets are flying on both sides of me. And I come up on a pole and I'm there and I can't go anywhere. And I can still hear the man crying for help. And all of a sudden, out of my right comes this white light, and this angel basically appears in front of me, unfolds its wings, and now is scooting back towards Mandalay Bay. And the bullets are ricocheting off his wings. And
Wow.
I can come out now and run out and pick up this man and run him back towards Giles and go through those gates. And as I'm running, I'm looking over my right side, and all I see is this angel following me, and the bullets ricocheting off his wings. I woke up, Chad, and I'll tell you, man, like I wasn't alone, and I felt strength. I took that shower my next morning, and when I took the shower in Vegas that next morning, we got back to our hotel room about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I had blood all over me.
Mhm.
So, I'm the water's running off me. I'm seeing the blood, kind of wash away off my skin on my left shoulder. Um, and that next morning, when now I'm at my house and I'm in my own shower and I'm looking and I could see that same, it's just a memory, right? Of what had happened and just getting all that washed off me. And that's all I wanted to do was just be cleansed.
Mhm.
And we went to church that next Sunday. And, of course, now you're like hyper vigilant. You're looking at everything. The next shooter is right around the corner with everywhere you go at that time. But when I got into church, I almost felt like I could take my armor off, and I could just relax and I could melt. And it wasn't for a couple times of going back and forth and feeling more secure, but there I am. I'm sobbing in the back corner of the church, and my wife's, to my left, and I didn't know my kids were there. My wife reminded me my kids were there as well, and the pastor, I didn't even know he's standing behind me, and he reaches up and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he said, "It's going to be okay." And then he gets up there and he starts, talking about this message of faith and adversity and everything in your life, and so it's just been a big. It's been my faith is increased. I feel like I've got an ultimate strong connection to God and Jesus. And I know I wasn't alone. The angels were there to protect me. I'm a big target. So I ran in, I got shot at a bunch of times, in terms of where the bullets were landing around my feet. And I truly feel like, all I tried to do was help and get as many people out as I could. It came with consequences. I live with it every day. But I would do it again, if it meant being able to save somebody's life and give them a chance to live. So there's my story on Las Vegas. Um,
It's incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, it's incredible, man. It's amazing how you just get through that, right? And you've obviously told this story a bunch of times, and the like as you're telling it, right? I'm sure the listeners are just like you're replaying, like you're seeing it visually in your mind, like everything that you're saying, and so I mean, 30 people, like that's just talk about the definition of a hero. Like, no, you are a hero. Like you may not want to admit it because you're just a humble guy, but like that is it's incredible. I can't even remember the movie, but there's a movie that reminds me of this. It's a war movie. Came out, I think it was Andrew Garfield, and I'm drawing a complete blank on it, what it is, but they had to like rope up and climb up a hill to get over the top of the hill, and he's in and out just saving people left and right. And he's not even a war guy. He's like he's not even supposed to be in the battle necessarily. But yeah, then when you added the part of the angel, right? And you're 6'5", like you're a big dude.
Mhm.
And imagine how big this angel was, of being able to cover you and um to give you that space. Like that's amazing.
Yeah. So I'll show you. I got a tattoo from that night. Um, stand up and show you a little bit. But Psalm 91:11
Yep.
written up.
Country strong at the bottom there.
Yep. And then there's 5 stars. And each one of those stars represents somebody that night. Well, one represents the 58 that passed that night. One is for my wife. The other one is for EMT that was with me the second half of the night.
Yeah.
I look up, the guy's like, brother, like, where are we going next? I'm like, who are you? He goes, I've been with you. You're carrying him out. We're fixing him up. And, I saw some images of him. People were sharing on Facebook too, like just a true hero. The 5 foot nothing nurse ended up being she set up 3 triage centers on Giles Street
Mhm.
and was like managing all of that. I mean, she's an angel. And then the brunette that came out of hiding in shelter to trust a complete stranger to come with me to help that poor girl that had been shot. So I wear them in my arm as a badge of honor and reminds me every day to just try to be the best person I can be. I still have my boots and hat, and I keep it all locked up, or not locked up, but closed up. And I have it in a place where I can see it every morning when I put my socks on, and it reminds me of just how strong I think you can be through any life's challenges, right?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to me is the thoughts of you get your wife out, like that's kind of your first thought, your instinct, like get in front of me, I'm gonna block you. Let's just get out of here as quickly as possible. And then you get her out and your close ones are out, you're safe in a way, right? And then immediately your brain, whatever it was, just said, I'm going back in. I'm going back in to help as many people as I can. And you end up pulling 30 people out. And you mentioned that I guess you've had thoughts of, well, why did I do that? Why didn't I just get out of there? I was safe. I'm alive. My wife's alive. Why not just keep going and keep running down the street? And obviously, no shame in that whatsoever. But something told you to no, stay. Is that, have you tried to figure that out? Was that part of kind of your process of like, why did I even go back in there?
I did. I questioned that, but what I always felt was the first touch that I had when I had helped that young man lay that girl down.
Mm-hmm.
Something about her touch when I touched her, it was her right wrist, and I had her right boot,
Mm-hmm.
and we set her down. But it was the touch. I'll never forget it. That just something told me to go back and just trust.
Yeah.
And so when I told my wife I'll be okay, I believed that, and I just kept moving, and something kept me going. I mean, I wasn't in shape, uh, not in that kind of shape, but, I had gone through like, God, right before I started scouting, I went through a police training deal, to maybe be a police officer. And,
Mm,
that was another dream I had. And, so I'd run through like those obstacles, and you drag the dummy bag or
yeah,
whatever, and I was always pretty good at that. It wasn't that big of a thing, but I look back on it now, I did carry about probably 30 people out. And then I got a lot more out just, out of hiding, and just, guiding them to keep running and stay north. And then all the people you put in the cars and stuff. But like, I don't think I was alone. I really don't. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
strongly feel that God was with me and I had
yeah.
my strength.
Why every inclination is that it was his spirit, the Holy Ghost, whatever you want to call it. That was probably your prompting, right? And
Yeah.
like, get back in there, like you're gonna help save people's lives, and you did without really sounds like hesitation. You just went and did
No
it.
hesitation.
And what was your wife? Was she kind of like, where are you going? Like, why are you doing this? Like any of that happened for you?
No, I think she knew.
Mm,
She just knew that's who I was.
yeah.
I think maybe the first words were like, "What?" But then she trusted me and I sent her off. I think her brother was probably more upset at me than anything. And,
Mhm.
her story, when they ran around Giles past this church to get over by that Desert Rose, and they were in between two cars, and her brother ended up finding like a construction sign and had it sitting on the hood of two cars, and they were kind of underneath it because they didn't know, with bullets or whatever, they were just
Mhm.
trying to kind of shield themselves from anything.
Okay.
And a guy came out of one of those rooms and said, "Hey, I've got room in here if you guys want to come in." And so him, and I think Kathy said there was like four or five of them, or three of them, that all invited about 20 some odd people into their place, and they barricaded it. They, closed all the blinds. They put things up against the door. There was one person in there that was injured. They were taking care of that person, and they hunkered down in there until, SWAT came in and cleared the rooms and
Mm,
everything out later on. And then that's where Kathy stayed until I was able to get in touch with her.
okay. Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, true, that guy didn't have to come out of his shelter and help all those people and, bring those people to safety. And he provided a lot. I don't think he understands truly what he did, but he saved a lot of lives,
Mm,
whether directly or indirectly. Just
yeah.
him offering that shelter was probably huge.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you've taken like I'm here in Vegas. That night I was sleeping. Like I didn't hear it. I didn't even know what was going on. And I think it was just early the next morning, and like usually we don't flip on the TV in the morning, but we did, I think, that morning. Was it a Saturday night? I can't remember
I
what
think it
night it
was
was.
no, Sunday night, I
Was it a
believe.
Sunday?
Yeah.
And we just heard, and we're like, holy crap. Like I can almost see Mandalay Bay outside my window for my home almost, right? And I was just it was shocking, right? And so that all happened. Now you've taken this experience and this circumstance in your life, and you're like, how can I basically make it good? How can I bring positive out of this? And you started a podcast yourself, the Walking Tall podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell us about like what you're doing moving forward through this whole process.
Yeah. I've always kind of felt I've spoken at some churches. Obviously I've been asked to tell the story. Anthony Castrovins through MLB TV and .com wrote a really nice story on this piece and put a video together. It's pretty compelling. He did a good job. I was in the Athletic. Your own Weitzman wrote a nice piece on me there.
Mhm.
And I say nice because I think it shed more light on the love
Mhm.
and the adversity that we deal with and how I was able to overcome that, but not just me, all those that were affected through that tragedy, in terms of being together and community support. And so I've always wanted to do something better. Well, last year, obviously, we had a shooting at Highland Park in Chicago. Um, a connection of mine through baseball introduced me to a gentleman that was there. He was the Parks and Rec director of Highland Park. He's the one that put the 4th of July parade on, or as far as managing it
Mhm.
that day. And his name's Chris Malazewski. And so I was there to mentor Chris through his going through his mush stage and walk through the fire with him to regain his strength as an individual and his faith. And he has now just completely blossomed, and it's been so much fun and amazing to watch him grow as a man and as a person and his strength. And so he called me or he texted me on January 16th asking if there was something that I ever thought about doing good. I've ever thought about doing good with what happened in our tragedies and my tragedy. And I said, yeah, I think about it all the time, but what do you have in mind? And he said, what about starting a podcast and then doing like speaking engagements with colleges and different programs and talking about our strength and adversity and you're not alone and trying to break the stigma up of between military, law enforcement, sports, where it's okay to say that you're not doing well.
Mhm.
Like some of the toughest people in the world have cried to me. I know that, like
Yeah.
that we've cried together. And I'll go anywhere and do anything. And you're never going to call me a name that I'm not going to like or ever put me down because I've proven myself. And so if it's okay for me to cry and okay for me to be vulnerable, well, then maybe it's okay for someone else. Maybe it's okay for one of your listeners that's listening right now that's dealing with a lot of shit and going through a lot of anxiety or just is kind of afraid to open up. There is somebody that you can listen to or that's going to listen to you. There's somebody you can talk to that's maybe gone through that battle that you're dealing with. And that was big. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we can try to just bring guests on to tell stories of adversity that they've gone through, and then just really just try to help. And so the Walking Tall movement was created to be able to really provide that guidance, and know that it's not a weak. When you think about walking tall, it's not a weak saying; it's something of strength, and it takes strength to be able to be vulnerable and show empathy and show grace and be a man of God. And it's not all faith based by any means. Like Chris and Vanetta, Dr. LaRosa, myself, we don't push any agenda or any politics. We don't talk about any of that stuff,
Yeah.
but it's just all about sharing a story of adversity and how that person was either able to overcome that immediate pain to learn how to live with things on as they move forward in their life, either together or with some sort of support. And that's a survival guide for somebody, that's dealing with things. You don't have to deal with it. The stigma of not being able to be honest with your boss at work and say, hey, you know what? I'm like struggling right now. Do you have like 10 minutes? I know we talk about things. Can I just literally open up to you?
Right.
I need someone to talk to. You should not have to hold that crap in. And we do it. We hold that stuff in all the time. And what's that? What kind of life are we teaching our kids?
Right.
Because our kids' mental health is a direct reflection of our own mental health. And so the Walking Tall movement was created to just really be open. And we've had some incredible guests on that are sharing stories. We had a combat Marine, wounded Marine on, told his battle story, which was gripping, brought me back to where I was at. I didn't really care for that part. But his story of strength and, and it's like you're bringing on, guests and we're talking about our stories and our lives. And all we're trying to do is maybe try to share that one story that's going to hit that one person, whether it's in sports or in real life. There's
Right.
always an application that can be applied to help somebody. Right. So we got that. And then I'm building a teaser alert coming out here probably towards the end of summer or so. We'll be beta testing it. But, for me, struggling to find a therapist when I actually decided I needed help,
Hmm.
which was really tough for me, especially my mentality. And then it took me a while to find my match. So I'm building a platform that is a little bit better, I think, than most platforms out there, especially the big ones, that provide a little bit more of an easier way to connect to a therapist.
Right.
And so the whole goal there is when somebody says, I need help, to get them the help, to get a connection created a little bit quicker than what's acceptable with, 90 days, 60-day window of trial. It should, if I say I need help, I need help. I can't go back. And,
Right.
you
Like
know,
today, like,
today
get
I
me in
want,
tomorrow. Right.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
not going to be 100%, proof, there's
Yeah.
nothing that's
Sure.
guaranteed, but maybe instead of it being 90 days, or maybe instead of it being an hour and a half of going through administrative work that a therapist has to go through before you even start therapy, and you're $400 in or $100 in or whatever that is, maybe your therapy starts in 30 minutes. Maybe you start to talk about things, which is going to increase, retention rates on the therapy side from the therapist. And it's going to give people someone to talk to quicker
Right.
instead of this 60-day window where you're still biting. And that's why a lot of people don't, they give up. They go the one time, and they didn't really care for it. It wasn't a good match. I tried it, and now I'm just going to eat my headaches. And unfortunately, that's why our suicide rates are so high. So I'm on a mission through that platform with Walking Tall, um, along with what I'm going to be coming out with here soon.
Okay.
To
Yeah.
Hey, if it helps one
Incredible.
person, great.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's and I my first thing was like when you told me that the other day, I was like, it's amazing. And I'm sure there's stuff that's already out there, but it's like,
totally.
how is not like a huge company like, and maybe it is, right? You've done the research, of course, but why is that not already there? And just like, boom, I know exactly where to go to. But now you got competition a little bit, right? And in different ways and avenues to get there.
Yeah, there's some great platforms, and I'm not saying anything negative whatsoever. If somebody's going to put effort into building something that's going to eventually help people
Yeah.
better themselves, man, hats off to you. I'm a big proponent on that. I
Mhm.
do not want any competition in the space. I just want to be able to provide something to the best of my ability. And I think, kind of like scouting, or you being able to have this podcast and you be able to talk to somebody about baseball or the mental side of the game, you have the experience. Well, unfortunately, I have the experience in going through the worst mass shooting in history. And because of my actions and what I saw and felt, and I had, unfortunately, women pass on my arms, and that experience that night has given me the expertise to build something in the customer or patient or users anxiety, right? Of,
Yeah.
I need help. I've been there. And I'm not saying that anybody else is, you don't need to go through a mass shooting to have that feeling. You could, you know, drive by and hear a loud bang. You could be in a car accident. You could, parents with children with autism or any type of needs. I mean, everybody goes through things in our life. So it's not, I'm definitely not saying that what I went through is the worst by any means. I was not maimed. I had surgeries, but I still have all my limbs. I'm not like our brave soldiers, our men and women in military and dedicating their lives to our country. I'm not a first responder that's going on call after call after call,
Mhm.
or a nurse that's dealing with patients day after day after day, or a teacher. I'm not that. So there's so many people that need help, but I think when you have passion, you have love, you have faith, and you have strength, those are good combinations to try to build something maybe that's
Yeah.
just a little better.
No, that's a great idea. No,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fantastic, and just the fact that you want to take this, like you said, this situation that happened to you in your life, and it's like you feel like it's your calling a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
and to just make it better. And maybe you're 6'5" big dude for a reason, right? And
Maybe.
you got that presence. But man, this has been Todd, this is amazing, fantastic. I mean, number one, I kudos to you for just being able to share this story, and I guess with such grace, right? That you're just able to kind of flow through it. And obviously you bet you worked through a lot of the trauma through it with a therapist, um, and you had the courage to go do that, right? And to get that and recognize I need some help. So you kind of let that guard down and just said, let's just go do this. So
Yeah.
appreciate you doing this, man. Best of luck
Oh,
to you in this, the mental health platform, your scouting hub, lot of different avenues for you going on, and a lot of good you can do. So
thanks.
I appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thanks, brother. I mean, it's full circle, right? You came up when I remember you as a God, you could really hit. Um, I remember seeing, I'm like, this kid's how old? That's crazy. But no, I appreciate you having me on, and I got to have you on ours. That would be amazing because I know you've got a really cool story. And I think on the one thing that I've always enjoyed in watching your shows and things, it's always been so genuine. And I've always appreciated you for that. And just pouring it out, so you're not afraid to even tell your own stories of when you were playing and some of the crappy parts that happen, and
Yeah.
hopefully kids can learn from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, it's the biggest advice. You got to open your mind. You got to be able to listen to people that have gone through that, and then apply your own kind of path to how you can navigate through that. But if you don't listen to how they're guiding you, then you're going out blind. Why are you going to do that? That's wasted time, wasted energy. We've already been through all that. So yeah, but thank you for having me on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
My pleasure. And we'll
Yeah.
be in touch soon.
All
And we'll
right.
see you in the next show, guys. Take care.